IMT would, on behalf of the newly formed United Nations, try the accused war criminals. It would consist of 8 judges, 2 named by each of the 4 Allied powers. 1 judge from each country would preside at the trials. The others would sit as alternates. Interpreters would translate the proceedings into French, German, Russian, and English, and written evidence submitted by the prosecution would be translated into the native language of each defendant. The IMT would not be bound by Anglo-American rules of evidence, and it would accept hearsay and other forms of evidence normally considered unreliable in the United States and Great Britain. The IMT was given authority to hear 4 counts of criminal complaints: conspiracy, crimes against peace, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. It has been argued that the Russians obliged the Western Allies by agreeing to hold the actual trials in Nuremberg in a spirit of cooperation. It has also been argued that there was a tit-for-tat arrangement. If the Russians agreed to Nuremberg, the Americans and the English would not bring up the Katyn massacre. What is known, provable beyond doubt, is that in 1943 the Germans took a number of captured American officers from their POW camp to the Katyn forest, about 12 miles west of Smolensk, Russia. The American officer prisoners were a mixed bag of Medical Corps officers, Judge Advocate General's Corps officers, and officers of the combat arms. In the latter group was Lieutenant Colonel John K. Waters, an armor officer who had been captured in Tunisia. He was married to the former Beatrice Patton. His father-in-law was General George S. Patton. Waters later became a 4-star general. At Katyn, there were several recently reopened mass graves. As the Americans watched, other mass graves were reopened. They contained the bodies of thousands of Polish officers who had surrendered in 1940 to the Red Army when the Russians invaded Poland from the east and Germany from the west. The Germans told the Americans that the Polish officers had been taken from the Kozelsk prisoner of war camp to the forest in 1940, shortly after the surrender, by the Soviet NKVD. There, after their hands had been wired behind them, they were executed by pistol shots into the back of their heads. The Germans permitted the American doctors to examine the corpses and to remove from their brains the bullets that had killed them. It was the opinion of the American doctors that the bodies had in fact been so murdered and had been decomposing since 1940. The Americans were then returned to their POW camp. The bullets removed from the brains of the murdered Polish officers were distributed among them. It is now known that there was some communication in both directions between the Allies and American prisoners of war in Germany. It is credible to assume that the prisoners who had been taken to Hammelburg managed to tell Eisenhower's headquarters in London what they had seen in the Katyn forest, and possible, if by no means certain, that they managed to get the bullets to London as well. Very late in the war, in March 1945, General Patton gave a very unusual assignment to one of his very best tank officers, Lieutenant Colonel Creighton W. Abrams, who then commanded Combat Command B of the 4th Armored Division. Abrams had broken through the German lines to rescue the surrounded 101st Airborne Division at Bastogne, and was later to become Chief of Staff of the U.S. Army. The U.S. Army's main battle tank today is the Abrams. The official story was that Patton told Abrams he feared the Germans would execute the American POWs being held in Oflag 8B, in Hammelburg, Germany, then 50 miles behind the German lines, when it appeared they would be liberated by the Red Army. Abrams was ordered to mount an immediate mission to get to Hammelburg before the Russians did and to liberate the Americans. In the late evening of March 26, 1945, Task Force Bomb, a company of medium tanks, a platoon of light tanks, and a company of armored infantry under Captain Abraham Baum, set out to do so. The mission was not successful. It was mauled by the Germans. When word of it got out, Patton was severely criticized for staging a dangerous raid to rescue his son-in-law. He denied knowing Colonel Waters was in Oflag 8B. When, shortly afterward, Oflag 8B was liberated by the Red Army, Waters was not there. It later came out that Waters and 101st Airborne Division's 2nd Lieutenant Laurie L. McCullough, an interesting character who learned that he had been awarded